today. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Eliyev, and I'm a managing director of My Synergy. Today, together on this webinar, the colleagues with me are Spencer Connell, who is going to present the value-based healthcare models by ICHOM, problems with the way health outcomes are being assessed today. He'll talk about the value-based healthcare, ICHOM, what they do, overview of ICHOM sets. Then we will show, we'll have keynotes by My Synergy as a partner, and we're going to talk about data interoperability and how ICHOM sets digitalization is done, and they're using clinical settings. And then at the end, we'll have an introduction from the Digital Health and Innovation Cluster with Mira Ganova. She will talk about the importance of digital health communities for improved patient experience and better outcomes. We have a Q&A session at the end. So anytime you would like to ask a question, you can do it by simply dropping a message in the chat. We'll be very glad to answer any questions that have. Now with this, I'm going to pass the ball to Spencer, who is going to start his presentation about ICHOM. Spencer.
I'm Spencer Connell, and I'm a project manager with the International Consortium for Health Outcome Measurements, or ICHOM. And today I'm just going to be talking a little bit about who we are, why we exist, and why our relationship with My Synergy and other tech partners is imperative for driving value-based healthcare forward into the future, into the next generation. So with that, let's go ahead. Yeah, perfect. So this is just the outline, and we'll just be progressing through this outline today. So I'm going to start with a brief discussion or overview about what the issues are with health outcomes and give direction to opportunities in the future. So next slide. So a little background, as of 2014, you can see here that the healthcare systems in countries all around the world are hitting a plateau. That red line there is the line that we don't want, but it's the line that we're currently following. A lot of, as spending on healthcare increases, we're seeing a diminishing return in the context of health outcomes. Ideally, we want to see, as costs increase, we want to see a more linear return on that investment. And so there's clearly something wrong with the way we're doing things now as a whole. There are some health systems that are successful in implementing value-based healthcare, but across the board, there are some issues. So we're going to explore some of those issues in the coming slides. So this next slide has just hit the go button 3 times, 2 more times. Yeah, perfect. So on the left, you can see a lot of the, oh, we lost the screen share. Oh, you're good. On the left, you can see health system metrics. Those are process-focused metrics that many of these health systems are already collecting. These things include mortality or survival, tests performed, medications administered, the number of visits, the number of readmission visits, really things that focus on the health system and the things that they're doing. On the right, you can see the concept of patient-focused metrics. So how is the patient's quality of life? Are they able to engage in the things that they want to engage, the things that are meaningful to them, such as being able to go back to work or engage in church, community, or play with their children? Are they alive? Are they independent to take care of themselves? These are things that are traditionally missed, that a lot of these health systems that are noticing that those diminishing returns are not collecting currently. So next slide. Yeah, so what that means is we need to focus on measuring the impact of the healthcare that's being delivered on the patient, rather than what is being done in the health system. So as I just kind of mentioned, a lot of the processes, a lot of the outcomes that are being measured right now are very process focused. So again, those interventions, office visits, stuff like that. And we need to shift toward identifying what is it that the patients are experiencing during their encounter with the health system. But even understanding, if we go to the next slide, even understanding that we need to measure what the patient's experience is in the health system, it's not that easy because uh, the tools that we're using, patient-rated outcome measures, are not standardized even then. So here you can see an example of breast cancer. This list of tools all measure very similar domains as it relates to breast cancer. So even though we know that we need to focus on the patient, it's very difficult when there's a whole library, a whole wide library of tools to select from. Next slide. Therefore, I mean, it's very difficult to compare apples to oranges, right? So in an ideal world, we really want to be able to compare apples to apples. And so that is where ICHOM comes into the equation. Next slide. Yeah, so that is where ICHOM comes into the equation in terms of acting as a catalyst for the shift to value-based healthcare. In 2012, ICHOM was formed by a group of thought leaders from around the world who understood that this gap existed in health systems around the world and identified the need to standardize what measures were being collected. So that whole list of tools to measure domains in breast cancer, they understood that that is not sustainable, and we need to really focus on the most ideal or pragmatic options from that list. And so if we look at the greater framework of value-based healthcare on the next slide, you can see that ICHOM really is just a part of this equation. We are just one of the 5 key components that were identified in Michael Porter's book, Redefining Healthcare in 2012 or 2011. But you can see down number 6, that is where you guys come into play. So MySynergy and other tech organizations who can allow for enabling information technology, who can allow for transition of information, who can allow health systems to share this information that is being collected from patients, whether it's with payers, government organizations, other healthcare systems, or even the patients themselves. You guys facilitate this next step, this next generation of healthcare, if you will. And so I mentioned that ICHOM is kind of aiming to standardize what is being collected. Some other things that set us apart from other outcome measure organizations is that we also recommend not just what to measure, but we measure how and when to measure it. We also incorporate the voice of patients directly into the process of developing and deciding what outcome measures are going to be utilized in our sets that we recommend. We pull patients into the actual working groups that I'll speak about here in a second, but we also we also incorporate hundreds, if not thousands of patients into the development process through validation surveys as well. Our sets are also unique in that they're designed with global pragmatism in mind. We really recommend things that are low cost, easily accessible, but still try to maximize on what is being measured and the impact of that measurement on the patient's experience. And I've kind of hinted at this, but there's a lot of different uses for these sets and a lot of roles in which tech partners can be of assistance in this process. We can use it for on that one-on-one patient to clinician decision-making process. We can also use it to drive quality improvement projects or to leverage real-world data to drive clinical research projects and clinical trials, or benchmarking to compare hospitals within systems or between systems. There's a lot of opportunity there, and by standardizing the outcomes that are being collected, we can lay the groundwork to explore a lot of those options. And so during this set development process, again, patients are the center of what we do and what makes ICHOM so unique when comparing us to other core outcome sets that are developed. You can see this little graphic here on the left. You can see the ideal clinical outcomes. So that's the ideal set of measures that a hospital system wants to collect. It might speed up their processes. It might give them more patient encounters. A lot of times those are not very meaningful to the patient, but very helpful for the hospital system. In the ideal academic side of things, generally those are like the 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 questionnaires that really give you a robust snapshot of what's going on, but they're not practical when we talk about applying them to hundreds or thousands of patients in a healthcare system. And so during the set development process with ICHOM, we pull patients into this to give us insights to help balance both of those sides of things, to really give us a pragmatic approach. And so you can see here, ICHOM has already developed 44 sets and counting. We already have 3 sets on the docket to be developed in 2023. And with these 44 sets, we've covered about 60% of the global burden of disease across 85 countries with over 45,000 downloads total. In terms of implementation, it's less than 45,000 because a lot of organizations will download our sets, but they won't really know how to implement, or they might not have the infrastructure to leverage implementing our sets. And so again, another opportunity for health partners or tech partners to engage in facilitating the adoption of our sets. You can see down the bottom right a lot of the nations where ICHOM sets are being heavily used. Again, there's a lot of opportunity there to expand into South America, into Asia, or even Eastern Europe. There's a lot of opportunity. So, oh, you see a chat there. Yeah, so gave you a very brief snapshot of who we are as ICHOM, developing standardized patient outcome measures that have a lot of different uses and a lot of value in terms of applying that to patients in the healthcare system. And the point of that is to help reduce the costs. So instead of focusing on admissions or number of visits or number of processes that are being done to a patient, we're able to cut down on those costs by focusing on improving the patient's quality of life. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But I want to just give a brief overview of the ICHOM methodology, because I think it's important that all of you guys understand the validity of what we're doing and the process that it takes to get to that point. So to start, there are 3 primary, you can go back. So there are 3 primary groups or organizations involved in this process. The first one is the ICHOM team, which is comprised of a research chair, a research fellow, independent from ICHOM, in collaboration with an ICHOM project manager and a research associate. These individuals are responsible for driving the project forward and doing a lot of the legwork in terms of identifying outcomes and outcome measures that need to be discussed by the next group, which is the working group. The working group is the meat of the team. They're multidisciplinary experts from all around the world. We ideally want as much geographical representation as possible in order to make these sets really applicable on a wide scale. These individuals consist of academics, clinicians, researchers, and patients or patient advocates. It's a very diverse group of individuals, but these folks are the ones who are responsible for reviewing the outcomes that are proposed by patient advocacy groups and the ICHOM project team, and ultimately garnering consensus to determine what the actual set looks like in application. And then the third group down at the bottom is the end users. So early on in the process, ICHOM holds focus group interviews with patients and patient advocacy groups to garner their insights into what outcomes really matter to them. But then later in the process, once the set is toward that latter end of development, it is actually reviewed by patient advocacy groups and future clinicians. So individuals who might be applying the sets or being on the receiving end of the sets to provide further insights into changes that might need to be made or gaps that might be missing from the set development process. So on this next slide, you can see really just the global scope. I used diabetes for a lot of these set examples, but it doesn't really matter what disease of the 44 sets that I choose. A lot of these slides are going to be almost identical. So you can see here the working group who developed the diabetes set back in 2015 is from all around the world, representing a lot of those countries and continents even. It was a very diverse group of people, and they developed a really awesome product. So on the next slide, this is really the most important slide, and I'm happy to send this to anyone who might want a copy of this. This is our framework methodology for any set. You can see here that it's designed for 2023 to 2024, but really this is applicable to all previous sets with some mild modifications and all future sets that we plan on developing. It's generally a 12 to 15 month process to develop them, but during this, you can see that early on, the focus of the focus of the project is determining what should be measured. So quality of life, satisfaction with work or play or whatever that might be. And then later in the process, once they determine what should be measured, then they focus on how to measure those outcomes. And then toward the very end, that's when I mentioned that they send that out to the end users, who then provide insights from a clinician perspective and a patient perspective to really clean up the recommendations before ultimately launching it. The other component that I will mention here is that toward that latter end of the process, they're also working on publishing a manuscript. So pretty much all of our sets, we're still waiting on a couple sets to be approved for publication, but most of our sets are published in scientific journals as a way of sort of validating the work that's been done by ICHOM and the importance of the recommendations that we propose moving forward. So being involved in this is very much a prestigious academic rigor as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. And so I will breeze through this because I'm cognizant of time and I was a little delayed with technology, but the very first step that we engage in is determining the scope of the set. So that's really just who is the set going to be administered to. So in the diabetes set, it was type 1 and type 2 diabetes patients, 18 years and above. So it is not pediatric diabetes. So when we look in the context of applying this to clinical practice, we need to make sure that it's following that scope. Once the scope of the set is determined, we then enter a literature review. Next slide. Yeah, so we enter a deep literature review. The ICHOM project team is really responsible for the bulk of this literature review, where they go through, and if we go to the next slide, they go through a very systematic approach to scouring the literature to see what is out there in terms of outcomes being measured, and what is the frequency of which those outcomes are being measured. And so if you go to the next slide, you could see a summary of the ICHOM project team took that synthesis of literature, brought that to the working group, and the working group voted on which of those outcome measures really were the most important, the most absolutely essential to have in a set, with an agreement rate of 70% or higher being needed to ratify the outcome into the set. In addition, agreement on these outcomes also involved input from the patient focus group that I mentioned earlier. So once those outcomes are determined, then we need to figure out how to measure, or what tools are going to be measured, being used to measure those outcomes. So we're going to skip this slide because it's not super important, but it is a systematic approach. So here is an example of a template that we use while we're scouring literature, scouring thousands and thousands of articles and thousands of tools. We're looking at their psychometric properties, but also looking at their pragmatic utility. So number of questions, number of translations, fee for use, licensing costs, things like that need to be balanced when determining what tools to recommend on a global scale. So on the next slide, you can just see a brief example from the diabetes working group. You can see on the left a ton of instruments, and on the right, you can see their psychometric properties as well as their clinical pragmatism. So in the form of administrative burden, licensing, patient burden. So the red with patient burden is the number of questions. Red would be a lot of questions, and we don't want a lot of questions for patients, because then it burns them out and disengages them from this process. On the next slide, on that previous slide, we talking about the literature search with tools. Once those tools are determined, then a patient validation or end user validation survey is sent out, where patients then provide insight using a ranking scale like this. So tools and outcomes that score a 7 or higher are included in the set, or at least considered for further use in the set. Tools that score a 4 through a 6 are debated further, and tools and outcomes that garner a 1 through 3 are excluded from the set. And so on the next slide, you can just see an example of the output that we get from reaching out to these patient groups. You can see down at the bottom that health-related quality of life, financial burden, diabetes distress, and symptom burden are really highly recommended by the majority of folks who were reached out to. 56, 58, 63% of all patients rank these between a 7 and a 9, saying these must be included. So that's just an example of the snapshot of information that we garner when reaching out to large numbers of patients. Then on the next slide, you can see an example of the clinician side of things. So you can see clinicians who are saying yes or no. They also have an opportunity to provide feedback and insights into maybe the verbiage or the scope of the measurements being recommended from the clinical side of things. So again, just a snapshot of the information that is garnered through this process following the development of the set. And then on this next slide, I mentioned that we want to measure what and how, but we also need to standardize when to measure. So every set from ICHOM does contain a timeline similar to this that tells you when to collect and what to collect at each time point. So for diabetes, it's very simple. It's very straightforward. We baseline 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, and just every 6 months, so on and so forth. And it lays it out very clearly: collect these pieces of information at this time point and collect these pieces of information at these time points. So every set contains that. And so at the conclusion of this process, on the next slide, you can see some of the products that are developed. We have on the left a flyer, which is really just a snapshot image that really just gives you a brief overview of what the set contains. We have a reference guide, which is really an easy to read bulk of the set. It really breaks down what clinical reported outcomes, what patient reported outcomes, how to measure them, when to measure them, as well as licensing information for relevant tools. We also contain, our website also contains all the scientific publications. So if you go to diabetes and you click on diabetes, you'll see the reference guide, the flyer, and the scientific publication that you can then read to get a further understanding of the process that was used to get to that point. And so that's just a snapshot of our set development process. I do want to illustrate the impact of our sets, as well as give you guys an example. So if on the next slide, you'll see just a snapshot heat map of the diabetes set. So this is a heat map that's exploring, or that looks at who is exploring our diabetes sets. And you can see that it's been downloaded over 900 times, which is a lot. And it's being implemented in, on the right, you can see the list of organizations from around the world who are actually implementing this in their routine clinical practice. And the purpose of building a relationship with tech partners is to expand this list. Ideally, we want to see this list grow exponentially into the future. But this is just a really exciting map that shows who's looking at us and also gives us a direction for maybe areas where we could increase that heat map presence. This is just for diabetes, but we have heat maps like this for many of our sets. But now I want to focus a little bit more on a singular example, Martini Clinic in Hamburg, Germany. So on the left, we talked about process measures. So those things like hospital admissions, readmissions, mortality and survival, those are measures that don't really mean much to the patient. We compare the Martini Clinic in Hamburg, Germany to hospitals in Germany and Sweden. They're pretty much on par with the Martini Clinic. Pretty good mortality rates when looking at treating localized prostate cancer. But if we shift the lens to that patient perspective and we look at things that matter to patients, so in this situation, incontinence, recurrence during a 1-year follow-up period, and erectile dysfunction during a 1-year follow-up period, we see that Martini Clinic has significantly lower rates of both of those when compared to the broader hospital systems, which means that they do a significantly better job at treating patients and addressing the patient's need rather than just getting the job done and, you know, trying to keep people from dying. And so as a result of this, Martini Clinic has been a high performer on a global scale in terms of patient outcomes. And they've done so well in their region. On the next slide, you'll see that they've performed about 2,500 radical prostatectomies annually, which is about 10% of Germany's total caseload, which is absolutely insane for a single hospital system or a single hospital clinic. They've done so well collecting outcomes and treating patients and addressing patients' needs that the Movember Foundation has endorsed them. And with these successes, they've actually been adopted as the ICHOM set has been adopted by the German Cancer Society as part of their requirements for the certification process when certifying treatment centers. So it all starts with one clinic, and we can build data up to demonstrate the impact of these sets and the resulting improvements in individualized care that come with standardizing the what, the how, and the when for outcome measures. And so on the next slide, you'll just see some brief examples of different directions that ICHOM sets could be used for. So they could be used to improve the patient-doctor communication experience, which involves that shared decision-making. It can lead to an improvement in clinical processes, looking at, how can we reduce costs or burden or time with other patients. It can be used for quality improvement projects. It can, again, just look at patient volume or outcomes associated with that. But it can also put hospitals or hospital clinics in a better position to negotiate with payers and regulatory bodies when it comes to shifting that payment from fee-for-service to value-based. And so that is where you guys come in as implementation partners, expanding adoption of ICHOM sets through seamless EMR integration. You guys can help with dashboard data reporting to garner insights from clinical practice on a local scale or broad regional scale. You can assist with protecting patient data while allowing aggregate information to be pooled for analysis. You can assist in leveraging that real world data and data analysis to drive person level and system level improvements. And you can enable better health information exchange through interoperability, which is what Hristo Ivanov is going to speak about with MySynergy. He's going to talk about why data interoperability is so important and what the role of the HL7 FHIR standards are, in addition to talking about ICHOM set digitalization and their use in the clinical setting. So again, there's a lot of opportunity here. So let's get some examples.
Hello from me. Nice to meet you. I'm Christoph from MySynergy. Our presentation is called The Synergy Between IT and Healthcare, Reshaping the Industry for a Better Future. It's focused mostly on implementation in the healthcare sector and is targeted to not only to hospitals, insurance companies, government and non-profit organizations, patient organizations, basically all the different shareholders in any IT and healthcare sector providers. So a little overview of what we are going to present. We're going to talk about two different topics. First, interoperability. Why is it crucial for the healthcare sector? What does it give you? Why is it so important currently to have systems that talk to each other? What can we gain from that? And second, we are going to present a case where we have aided in the implementation of value-based healthcare solution, ICHOM sets specifically, and what is it for the different partners we have that implemented those things. What outcomes did they get out of this? So first of all, interoperability. Why is it crucial for the healthcare sector? In most of the big software vendors in the healthcare sector are basically creating big data silos, and they prevent the delivery of coordinated care. They make it nearly impossible for providers, pharmacists, and other stakeholders to work together for truly coordinated care. So while there may be some interoperability between the EHR system and all the support systems inside the hospital, like pathology, diagnostics, equipment, there are still places where data is gathered, transferred, and used either in paper or in free text fields, and it's very hard to make it to reason about what's going on, to make the decisions that impact patient lives, especially when critical decisions about the patients must be made in short time frames, for example, in ER. So improving interoperability will enhance the delivery of services not only by the clinicians, but also all the relevant parties like insurance, payment providers, different organizations that help with the treatment of very rare diseases, and also common ones. It will also deliver secure access and integration to electronic data, so it can be used to optimize health outcomes. By bringing together patient information from multiple trusted sources, the healthcare providers and the patients will have greater visibility of accurate information that leads to better decisions, and those decisions will in turn lead to better outcomes. Recently, there is a push towards data unification and sharing not only between different hospitals and systems, but between them and other participants with vested interest in the healthcare sector. So, especially in the EU, there are multiple different initiatives that strive to have digital passports, health passports of people. Also, the different governments, not only in the EU, but in US as well, and in all the different countries. Basically, it's really important to have not all, but most of the patient data readily available when you have to make critical decisions. And this means not only scan documents with statements from the different clinicians, but you also need to have it in a structured manner. So you can basically categorize it, structure it, make use of it in a better way. It also enables the other and better services based on this information, which are simply not available without such information. For example, improving cross-border treatment of rare diseases, providing adequate treatment in life-saving situations. When you travel somewhere abroad and something bad happens to you, need to be able the clinicians need to be able to make informed decisions, and they don't always know the language that you're speaking in order to make sure that they are treating you the right way. So how can we help? What is healthcare interoperability actually? The ability to safely and securely transfer medical information between systems, thus making it readily available within the timeframes needed, within the reasonable timeframes needed, when and where is it needed. So this is harder than it sounds on paper because most of the systems are still not talking to each other very well. There are different stories all around the world, especially in US, where there are hospitals who are having systems from multiple vendors. They are trying to bring them together to bring information from one to the other and make some reasoning about what's going on and enable fast treatment. And it's always a struggle. So there is push that comes from the hospitals, from the different insurance companies to escape that data lock-in, to make it better, to make better solutions that are able to talk to each other and to avoid the vendor lock-in, which is making it currently very hard to extract, augment, and reason about it outside of the vendor system. So this is where standards like HL7 FIRE come into play. The Health Level 7 is a non-profit organization. It's responsible for defining, revising, and refining healthcare interoperability standards. We are HL7 Gold member. So MySynergy has access to the myriad working groups that are currently developing the standards and also the data, how the different protocols of the data management will look like. How are they going to be successfully implemented in on-site projects? How are they going to be developed in such a way that it's secure and that covers most of the use cases of each and every organization? So we have experience in system integration backed by successfully implemented on-site projects in medical universities, national and university hospitals. And our key motto actually is synergy, the ability to connect different parties and combine the unique value propositions of the existing solutions in each organization that we are partnering in. We strive to help in completing and structuring the digitalizations of healthcare information. This helps the organizations to extract insights, and it's actually crucial to the implementation of any value-based healthcare solution. Why is it so? Because in order to have value-based healthcare, you need to have structured data. It's only possible if we have the right data there in a digital format where we can extract it and transform it and make it easy to reason about. The precise measurements that are needed for the analysis of the processes that are measured in the value-based healthcare world are actually require highly structured and readily available information from multiple sources. We talked about patients, we talked about clinician input. So before we have it inside the questionnaire format, we need to have it somewhere. There need to be a data source, be it the patient or somebody who talks to the patient, or somebody who is reviewing the clinical record of the patient, be it a clinician or a nurse or somebody else with medical background. So as a natural evolution of the pervasive approach to patient treatment, it evaluates the entire process of healthcare services and their outcomes from different angles. Like, for example, are the provided therapies adequate for patient care? Are they cost effective? Are they achieving the desired results with regards to patient well-being? This is especially in line with this is especially in line with what Spencer talked. And in order to answer those questions, we need data, like I said, from all the different EHR systems, pathology systems, from the different uh, mobile applications where patients can create responses to the questionnaires which we assign to them, or from call centers who can actually call the patients and lead them through their pathways and remind them to take their medications, to go to the hospital at the desired at the time that is needed, and to gather back the feedback from them. So part of the information comes from the HR systems and inside the hospitals. This includes diagnosis grouped by disease areas, by therapeutic approach, by diagnostic procedures being carried out. Also, patient demographics, chosen treatment methods, and costs. Oftentimes, access to such data is hindered by the technologies used, and even if it's when it's not, the huge variety of information there is, and also the encoding methods of this information is a challenge that must be overcome for each and every hospital individually. Fortunately, standards do exist, and they help bringing the gap in the communication via protocols for information exchange, mainly HL7. The information gathered from DHR is later combined with the patient data. So patient surveys are actually replying to different questions that are not that are related to their treatment and their disease, but they're questions that they can answer. For example, are they satisfied with the treatment? Has their quality of life increased? Are there any adverse events? Are there any relapses in the conditions? Gathering and the patient data and relating it to the treatment is actually a complex process, because it involves the creation and maintenance not only of questionnaires to each disease area that is studied, and their responses to the treatment, but also the actual relation of the different data that you get from the different patients to the clinical data. Most countries don't have the easy ways to identify people, and this is only one of the approaches that we need to deal with, to match the information coming from the patient with that from the clinician. It's not always trivial. Also, we have developed solutions which can help with creating or being used in call centers and specialized organizations that can be gathering feedback from the patients and that are able to relate them with each process being tracked, be it in an active hospital or in some other company that is partnering with that, or with a company that is actually providing services for clinical trials. And in order to enable the whole process, MySynergy is partnering with different software vendors, which provide dedicated clouds for healthcare, and they offer compliance and regulatory approved methods for safe and secure data storage. Where needed, MySynergy can assist and fully develop secure data bridges which allow regulated data transfer. For example, anonymization of data, or limiting it only to the different to the needs of each study, to filter out the really confidential parts. Thus, the digitized, standardized, and verified data is made available to the peer-reviewed methods for treatment evaluation using sets provided by ICHOM. And MySynergy is an implementation and digitalization partner of ICHOM and is part of the working group for standardizing the breast cancer set. We have been working together towards the standardization of the patient-reported outcomes and questionnaires. The developed sets are AI and ML friendly. This is crucial for enabling further insights generation, such as predictive analysis for treatment effectiveness, cohort analysis, cost and benefit based optimization suggestions. Also, while the possibilities are not fully explored, there is already tangible benefits to such holistic value-based approach to patient treatment. You can, for example, present different outcomes of treatments to patients and allow them to make informed decisions of the different treatment, of the concrete treatment that they wish to have, in order to better comply with their own lifestyle and goals. Also, it allows for much better visibility analysis on the cost and effectiveness of the treatment, and provides information based on case studies and performed over time. It is very hard to make to measure outcomes where the data is actually being gathered not once but over time for a patient, where your studies based on multiple hops, multiple outcome measurements that happen in the span of, for example, 1 or 2 years for some diseases. So we are going to talk about how we are measuring clinical outcomes and patient-reported outcomes in standard sets. So generally, improving the interoperability will enhance the services delivered by clinicians. It will ultimately lead to better patient outcomes, and also it is allowing to bring in light the different ways where the current processes existing inside a healthcare organization, for example, a hospital, to be actually optimized in such a manner that can bring more relevant treatment to the patient based on the outcomes of the previous encounters he had with that organization. Let's say we have a concrete example of data sourcing and pooling. Here we are mainly talking about breast cancer and how MySynergy measures the treatment effectiveness over time. At the core of each study are a set of questionnaires. This is uh, in the green box here. So every questionnaire has a data source. It can either come from a patient or from a clinician-reported outcome. And uh, those questionnaires are basically separating patients by cohorts, by disease treatment, patient demographics, specifics of the disease and the applied treatment, and also the patient-reported outcomes over time. Uh, Moreover, for cancer treatment, where the treatment process is highly sensible to the time to treatment, the different methods, and their results, it's really important to choose the treatment providing the best outcome for the patient while choosing the most cost-effective long-term solution. There are more and more innovations, and we need to make sure that they are actually providing the best outcomes, not only for the current lifestyle of the patient, but overall. Like, we are not only measuring whether the patient how long the patient lives after the treatment, but also their quality of life. And instead of treating every patient encounter separately, his or her well-being is tracked continuously over time, which means he comes back to the hospital after the initial treatment for revisits, to check again his condition, to make sure that his condition is either stable or is actually improving over time. And all of these encounters are actually tracked, both the outcome from the clinicians and what the patient feels out after those encounters have finished. Um, so the clinician reported outcomes are actually very tedious to fill out manually from the clinicians, because first the doctor has to go to the EHR to input all the different information about the patient who has come in to him for examination, to create all that narrative, and then to extract it again in this questionnaire and possibly somewhere else to make some other structured data. So one of the things that My Synergy helps here is actually not only digitizing the questionnaires that are extracting the data to enable value-based healthcare care solutions, but also to help pre-fill those questionnaires from existing data from the EHR. So if you have a set of patients, it is and the data is really structured, we can help you to extract the data needed for the value-based healthcare from our existing data sources and not leave the medical personnel to fill those out. Also, if it's not structured in that manner, we also allow and enable the organizations to transform the data in such a way that is possible to be entered automatically in those questionnaires and gathered along with the information that we have from the different patient surveys. Um, we are actively working with HL7 standard committees to develop the data extraction schemas with minimal human intervention. For example, I know that I keep repeating cancer, but actually for cancer we have quite a good set from the US. It's called M-code, and it's for encoding cancer-based conditions. So if we have the information structure there, it's very easy to start actually measuring value-based healthcare solutions. We have developed software for tracking patient-reported outcomes. It's fully integrated with call center support that is helping the right part of this approach, the information to be gathered from the patients, because it's one thing to develop mobile applications or internet sites or whatever to get the patient's information, and not all the patients are actually tech savvy enough to be able to use that. So we can use third-party organizations to help gather the rest of the data, like what happens immediately after the treatment, 6 months after that, and every year afterwards. So having such data gathered is tremendously effective in helping developing and training predictive algorithms for patient treatment based on studies. All of these questionnaires can be very easily mapped to AI models and to start extracting insights about how are the treatment going over time. Is it actually improving the patient lifestyle? Is it providing is it actually providing the quality of life that they are advertising when they are developing those, for example, clinical the drugs for clinical trials, or even existing programs for treatment of specific diseases can be reevaluated over time. And how they are implemented inside each organization can the data out from these questionnaires can help you really see whether what you're doing is correct, whether it's costs whether it comes into the costs that you have put inside the budget, whether it's actually effective. So let's get some measures, because we talked a lot about what we are doing. Some concrete examples. We have 22K processed patient dossiers. Out of those, 12,000 are from patients and 10,000 from clinical trials. The top 10 hospitals in Bulgaria employ data processing services provided by MySynergy. Those existing solutions that we talked about in the previous slides, and they actually report that 32% of the patients have improved overall well-being as a result to changes to the therapy stemming from our data analysis. This is all based on the value-based healthcare proposition that we have. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn over to Mira, because all of the examples that we shared right now would not be possible without being part of a wider community ecosystem, like the digital health and innovation cluster in Bulgaria. This cluster plays a major role in delivering outcomes to patients. There are multiple companies inside who are dedicated to improving the lifestyle of the different patients. And with that, I'm handing over to Mira.
I can see it.
Okay, Mira, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. After all the obstacles, mainly technological, it's a paradox because we are Digital Health and Innovation Cluster Bulgaria, but some ways the not technological approach is better. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you on the digital health approaches, new technologies, and mainly, please down to the next slide, and mainly to share with you the idea and the importance of the community in creating successful digital health programs or projects. So the next slide. Thank you very much. Just a quick overview. You all are aware with the high fragmentation of the healthcare system. So today we are facing a wholly new era where the care industry have to overcome a huge a huge obstacle and to undergo a huge change. We are facing the situation where industry from one side and politicians from political leaders, we can say from other side, also have facing with the health and system issues that impact access to care, quality of the care, and last but not least, the cost of care. Also, we have to take in mind that the patient's needs are increasing more and more due to main disease and demographic problems. As you see to date, 18% of the people have at least one chronic disease. 50% have two or more chronic conditions, which is a huge number of chronic disease patients. Again, people with disabilities and chronic disease, over 77% of the total disease landscape in Europe, a huge healthcare problems, a huge challenges to overcome from the government and from the political leaders. But we can say that this situation could create a new opportunity to solve these long-standing problems. Some of the new approaches that I want to share with you is value-based healthcare, as what Spencer and Christo mentioned already. They have the potential to deliver better experience and to meet the more adequately the expectations of the consumers and of the patients at all. So payers can also take advantage of these new models, new technologies, new approaches to automate, for example, core processes, to also strengthen their partnership with clinicians, with providers, and also to reposition for the governments to reposition themselves as leaders of the healthcare landscape and show to the nation and to the countries that they can overcome these main healthcare challenges and to put priority over the quality of the care of the healthcare, and not also to calculate the volume of the health delivery care. So the next slide, Dancho. Thank you. All these approaches, all these new technologies requires a lot of interdisciplinary teams to overcome these challenges. So, and this requires also a new approach for the healthcare delivery to achieve, of course, better outcomes, because in the end of the day, everybody talks about patient outcomes and how to improve the patient experience, how to improve the patient outcomes, and to put this patient to become healthier and to be an integrated part of the society. So here we can see the three main pillars to overcome the main gaps in the healthcare. We already mentioned the accessibility gap. We need more accessible healthcare system. We need more quality of the healthcare and better delivery system to reduce, of course, the healthcare inequality in the system. Also, of course, information gap a lot of information gap due to the huge information, the huge data that is generated in the healthcare sector. So we have to put priority on the collection and analysis of the patient data to set a basis and take effective decisions over this information in the healthcare sector. So in the center, we are putting value-based healthcare, where the technology can help to deliver better evidence-based data, and to see how we can improve, due to this data, to this basis, how we can improve the patient outcomes thanks to the value-based healthcare models integrated in one healthcare system. Also, we need to empower the individuals, as you see, and there is demand of the patients to take control over their own health, and to be more responsible for this, for their well-being. And all of these are leading us to economy impact and to economy benefit, where thanks to all these integrated models, value-based health models, technological approaches, we can reduce the healthcare cost and take over the burden over the healthcare system, thanks to increasing the care efficiency and sustainability in the healthcare system. The next slide, Dancho, thank you. So, of course, this all can be successfully done when you have partners on your side. And you see that digital health ecosystem can benefit both payers and partners. So we, through the cooperation between a number of stakeholders, we can exchange knowledge, know-how, and expertise, how to precise every model, every healthcare model, and every technological solutions better to the patient, how we can deliver better experience to these patients due to the new models and to the new technology. So the value proposition, when we are participating in and joining an ecosystem or a community, can give to the patient more new touching points. Of course, improved patient experience. As we mentioned, this is one very important thing to do to improve the patient experience. Also to improve healthcare value, to create an environment for technological innovation development. And of course, last but not least, to increase the efficiency to the whole healthcare sector, thanks to the optimized data and the quality of the data. Next slide, Dancho, thank you. And mentioning all this above, during the past several years, we successfully are creating a platform where the industry knowledge meets technology. It's something like our value proposition. DHI Cluster as an organization aims to promote international collaboration and to advance the transfer of knowledge on digital health topic, aligning stakeholders, all the stakeholders in the healthcare sector, to collectively act upon common goal and upon global opportunities, with the clear focus to improve the efficiency and the sustainability of the healthcare sector. Our organization has 45 technological and pharmaceutical companies. You can see the logos of our community here, all the companies. Also, we are partnering with the main stakeholders. In the left side of the slide, we are attracting a lot of key opinion leaders for honorary member of the organization. And this is an example of a vital expert community where all the stakeholders can collaborate in order to achieve better patient outcomes and deliver new healthcare models for the healthcare sector. What we do, in fact, down to the next slide, we support mainly the development of healthcare solutions. We connect partners and key stakeholders. We trying, of course, to educate and to raise more awareness for digital health and innovation approaches and technologies. Also, we communicate with the society within the community. And mainly, we are trying to change the healthcare environment and to change the perspective, all decision makers in our healthcare system in order to focus on the patient outcomes and the quality of the healthcare service. The next slide, Dancho, thank you. And thanks to this community and to this thriving and vital ecosystem in Bulgaria, and thanks to our efforts to communicate and to matchmake different stakeholders in order to deliver better integrated care for the Bulgarian patients, this led us to one very interesting project, which I think with high added value for the system. The project consolidates various stakeholders from our network. I forgot to mention that my synergy is a member of DHI Cluster Bulgaria, and in fact is one of the first member in our community. They believe that we can do more things, more efficient. We can integrate more efficiency and sustainability in the system only if we act as one. So this project consolidates, as I said, the various stakeholders, including my synergy and others partners from our networks. The common vision for better patient experience, for improved clinical outcomes, consolidate these stakeholders. My synergy, also you see R-Pharm is the association of the research-based pharmaceutical companies in Bulgaria. We also have attracted a national patient organization, and as a partner also are including Bulgarian Medical Association, is the association of the Bulgarian physician here, and also the University Hematology Hospital. And we consolidate all these efforts in a long-term, I can say, value-based healthcare project for hospital optimization towards better patient outcomes. Next slide, Dancho, thank you. Just a quick overview of a few metrics showing the scope of the project for the last 24 months to give you an idea of all the activities in the projects. I want to mention that all these interviews, you can see 12,000 analyzed patients through interviews and also analyzed physicians and processes. All this were done on place in the hematology hospital, despite the COVID situation. Next slide, Dancho, thank you. Also, is this the next slide? Yes. The most interesting part, okay, it's not the most, but one of the interesting part during the project was the feedback of the patients. We as a community, but were analyzed the patient experience while the patients are in the hospitals and during the treating process also. A lot of changes were done in place in the hospital due to this patient's feedback. Also was made an important analysis during the project that show us the actual therapy outcome based on a specific disease area. The selected diagnosis is multiple melanoma for this use case. The next slide, Dancho, thank you. Also, during the project was made a detailed patient pathway diagrams. And also, I think Spencer mentioned this heat map. So we successfully made a patient flow heat map also, while tracking the patient with different IoT devices. This was made to understand better how much time exactly the patient spent in the hospital during the visit, and to follow all the patient pathway during the hospital stay. This time also was used in the calculation of the overall cost-benefit analysis to understand how much is the exact cost of every therapy of each patient. A little bit about the methodology. So the used methodology here were for the cost-benefit analysis. Was combined, is combining micro and micro approach to cost estimation. The micro approach was being applied to the calculation of the total cost of the treatment related to the consumption of medical resources and drug therapy. And the macro approach was made to see the direct non-medical costs related to the how can I say, to the administrative cost, consumables, utility general cost, security, and all the administrative activities in the hospital, for which the average cost per patient is presented here in of course in the slide. The next slide, Dancho, thank you. Here are some benefits for the stakeholders, briefly highlighted on this slide. We can say that some of the action that we've made during the process, the project preparation and the process execution was to lead us to the following results. Patient appointment system was implemented for scheduling patient visit, streamlining patient flows, and thanks to this optimization, reducing drug wastage in the hematology hospital. Also, therapy and process optimization were done to improve patient outcomes. The health data was collected, organized, and structured to enable health data analysis and to form a real evidence basis to take effective decision making over this data. Also, we set several KPIs for a continual improvement measurements in the project. Now I can say that the project was very difficult because here in Bulgaria there is a lot of resistance we are not early adopters. We are not early adopters of the technologies and also of new models. But I can say that thanks to all these actions, thanks to these projects, to these benefits, also thanks to the consolidation of all these stakeholders, because as you saw on the previous slide, there are in this project, there are a lot of main stakeholders who take very seriously all the project processes, supported all the processes during the execution of the project, and they also have observed a lot of the actions that have been made in the hematology hospital. So the improved patient outcomes are a true thing now in the hematology hospital. Also, in fact, we reduce the therapy cost by this process optimization, administrative optimization, document optimization, and patient flow optimization. Follow-up and patient support are integrated due to a call center, and also a whole platform for patient support also was integrated in the hospital. And of course, a lot of guidelines and pharmacotherapeutics guidelines for compliance. We successfully decreased the waste and low value-added service to increase reimbursement for high value-added services in the hospital sector. I think that the project now is on the last stage, and I can say that this is a great validation of value-based healthcare models that can show to the government, not only in Bulgaria, but the governments, how they can, with very small and precise actions, how they can achieve better results, better clinical outcomes, to reduce the administrative burden, to improve the patient experience, to improve the patient outcomes, and this also to reflect to the state economy when we can make investment and savings due to all this optimization of the value-based healthcare approaches. Thank you very much for the attention. If you have questions, do not hesitate to ask my synergy. I'm kidding. I'm also here to answer your questions if there is something to ask me. And I can say that as an executive director of our organization, I'm very proud and happy that thanks to our community, thanks to this platform that we successfully have set, we could implement and integrate a real value-based healthcare projects in the Bulgarian healthcare system. And after the finalization of the project in the hematology, we are planning to address these projects with all the results to the government and to other hospitals, and to try to make other proof of concept of this idea and of this approach. Thank you very much for the attention. I don't know to who I have to give the floor. So, Dancho.
Thank you, Mira. It was my pleasure also today hosting this event and sharing all this experience with the people who attended our webinar. And I will be more than happy if there are some questions. We will make a recording and we'll try to cut all those technical problems during the webinar so that you have a smooth video recording that we can share with all the participants and all the registrants. Happy to answer any questions either now or after the event. So you can just drop me email, or Spencer if you have questions about ICHOM. It's a truly pleasure to partner with organizations like DHI Cluster and like ICHOM. because this is the future, and we believe in it. So hopefully together we will work toward better healthcare outcomes. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the day, wherever you are around the world.